How's it going? We are back with Drop a Line. We are back with Ime Atakpa tonight. I am so excited for this conversation. Welcome back to our regularly scheduled time. This is Drop a Line. And we are on with Ime. We are live. Ime, how's it going tonight, bub?
It's going good. It's going good. We're having a great night. It's been a good day too, so I can't complain about anything. I've been getting some work done. How have you been?
I've been great, man. I tell you, the last time we spoke, I was not yet in graduate school, but I am now, and I'm about halfway through the semester. So I got to tell you, I have now gotten a taste of what you've been dealing with, and I know it's just a taste. It's just a slice of the pizza, but I feel like we are a little bit more understanding of each other now, for sure. So it's good to have you back, and there's a lot that I want to catch up with you about. But first, I really want to thank you live here on the show for being one of our regular viewers of Drop a Line. Ime has really been a big supporter of the show. We see him in the comments section all the time, and he's always engaging the other guests. He's always mingling. He's always asking good questions. He's always providing great insights about writing, about research, about the whole business. And that's what Ime, I think, is going to go into a little bit tonight. But first, I just want to ask Ime, what have you been up to lately? What's been going on?
Well, first, thank you for having me, and congratulations on being in grad school. It's terrible. And you know what? Just give it another year, maybe. I don't know. You're going to learn to hate it as much as everyone else does. Going to be some of the greatest times of your life ahead of you. No, but you'll love it. But yeah, I mean, I've been teaching. I teach 2 classes at Kennesaw. And then I've just been working on my capstone, which is a project I've been working on that's intending to take a lot of the literature on writing and take everything from all these different authors and bring them together and see what are the commonalities there, what's different, and what can someone who's an aspiring writer take away from all that. Because there's just so many of them. So like, how can you can't just pick up like one and feel like you have a really good understanding of it. So I'm just trying to bring all that together and see if I can make something that is going to be helpful to upcoming writers. And then along with that, I'm also kind of working on a new novel, slowly. Thank you. Slowly, which is hard. It's really hard to write a novel and also study the craft of writing at the same time. So
I can imagine. Interestingly enough for me, over the years, as I wrote within the genre that I'm writing in, so I'm currently about to release a dark fantasy, which involves a demon slayer, right? Now, we've seen that exact concept before, have we not? I'm not necessarily inventing the genre in which I'm writing. I am trying to develop my own story, my own characters, my own theme, all that stuff. Well, maybe not my own theme, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Well, it's a theme for your story.
Right. But the thing is that I often found over the years, it's so interesting what you just said. I often found that I avoided my genre a little bit just because I didn't want to get too self-conscious about what I was doing, like I didn't want to do the research aspect of it while I was drafting. I knew I had to do it and I knew it had to get done. But when you kind of mix and mingle with those a little bit, it does kind of cause you to write a sentence and then kind of, instead of continuing to write sentences, just kind of pull back and be like, what is going on? What is life? What is this project? What am I doing? Who am I?
I do that with so many different I do that all the time when I'm writing, actually. It's bad. I feel like it's a really bad habit to have when you're writing and also trying to critique yourself at the same time. I feel like it's super important when you're writing to be able to separate that part of you that's just the creative part of you that is writing out of the joy for the genre, the joy of the story or the characters or whatever it is that motivates you to write that story. And step out of that and step out of that editor part of you or that critical part of you and just have fun writing the story. And then come back later and be critical of yourself because, either way, when you come back to whatever you wrote the first time, you're probably going to hate it. You're probably going to look at every line and just be like, why did I write this anyway? Right. So there's no reason to put yourself through the anxiety and the trouble of not liking it the first time, right? So, but
Sure.
it's hard. It's hard. Like the more you learn about writing, the harder it gets. Right?
Yeah, and it's especially. Oh, go on.
Because like the more there is that you need to be looking out for, right?
Yeah.
And so you're subconsciously looking out for these things as you're writing, feeling like I don't want to do this wrong the first time. But you have so many other drafts to work on it that it's such a pointless thing to do, but it's also really difficult to avoid doing it.
Absolutely, and it's especially difficult to avoid in what you're describing. You know, you are beginning a new project, which is awesome. I'm very happy to hear that. I'm definitely going to be giving you a lot of as much pep as I can. But you're also in graduate school. You're also doing your research projects, and it's not like you can really separate out your your tasks and responsibilities. You know, sometimes life just puts you in a position where you kind of got to tackle both at the same time. And so what is that like for you? Like, do you have to do a lot of improvising? Like, this isn't how I want to be doing this, but this is how we're going to do it anyway. Like take us into the daily a little bit.
What I do really well is I try to avoid doing both of them at the same time. I won't do. So if I'm working on my capstone, I'm not going to be working on anything that's creative while I'm working on my capstone, just because I know that it's going to leak in a way that's going to be unproductive, or that won't allow me to focus. So I'll just avoid that completely. Or if I was researching something for the story that I was writing, I would try not to be researching and writing at the same time. Whether it was researching, just researching genre conventions, maybe. And that might just include reading other books in that genre, or actually just Googling things about genre conventions, or researching markets. I try to just avoid doing all that kind of stuff while I am also working on writing the story itself. That way I can like carve out some time where I'm just mentally focused on just doing the story. And it just makes it that much easier to just think about that if I know just innately that I don't have to think about anything else. But I can still kind of keep that knowledge that I've gained through whatever research I've done in the back of my head to some extent. Just not so much like in the back of my head that it's useless, but in the front enough that it won't bother me and I can use it and access it, which is, it's a hard balance to make. But I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. Maybe other people have like more experience with that than I do as far as making that balance work out.
Well, I think that a lot of people, and I think that, I think that you're the same as a lot of people at the end of the day. You know what I mean? I think that what a lot of people do is they just do it. They know that they are in a position where they have to get their research projects done, where they have to commit an insane amount of time to reading, to researching, to processing new information, to sometimes critiquing other authors, to being beta readers for somebody, to being an editor for somebody, to doing market research, and they have to pump out a creative project on top of it. I really think that pretty much everybody, I think everybody kind of starts, this is my opinion. This is just Alex's opinion, everybody. But I feel like everybody kind of starts by just doing it, by taking it up. And then along the way, they kind of figure out, okay, if I do this at this time of day, I'm good. If I do this other thing at this time of day, I'm good. Or any, amalgam of things. I know that for me personally, the biggest turning point for me was learning to write every day. And it's amazing, even in the smallest increments, if I really make it a point to write on the daily, even when I miss a day, I still feel like a daily writer. You know what I mean? Like missing a day is just like, oops, I missed it, but it's okay. Tomorrow's a new day. Like it totally like got rid of that whole, I got to plan my next writing sprint. It just totally reconfigured my brain in that way. It was really fascinating.
Or like just trying to hit those word limits like every day or like every week or whatever it is. Which I don't know. I will go weeks for not writing sometimes, weeks without writing. I'll go weeks without writing sometimes. And I will not feel bad about it at all until like maybe like maybe like occasionally I just feel like some weird anxiety and I'm just like, I should be writing right now. But usually I don't feel bad about it, which, okay, it's weird, but I feel like writing every day is something that, like, whether it's creatively or technical writing or research writing, I feel like still writing every day and just like working with words on any type of level is still going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not really like on like this Stephen King level of you have to write every day if you want to be a good writer,
Mm-hmm.
because everyone doesn't have that luxury all the time or have that kind of time, either like physical. I mean, time isn't physical, but either like that physical time or the emotional time, or sometimes mentally you just can't write and you
Mm-hmm.
just can't bring yourself to do it because you're just so exhausted from whatever you've been doing, on a regular day-to-day basis. And so I think getting rid of that stigma is important for a lot of writers to feel like, do you have to write
Yeah.
every day? No. But
Yeah.
should you be consistent about your writing? Probably, right? Even if it isn't all towards whatever you're doing.
And, in conjunction with what you just said, just so that I don't put any pressure on anybody in the audience, I would like to just throw out a disclaimer real quick that I actually haven't written every day. For me, it was a mind shift that I needed, that I just needed to get more consistent, like Ime is saying. But there have been days that I missed, and there have been months at a time that I just completely went dry. I like to say, the well's dried up. That's how it kind of feels, like there's no water in the well. But yeah, like it's definitely not meant to pressure, but it was eye-opening for me because it was something that I really needed, because I had been doing it a certain way before, and I had learned that whatever I was doing just wasn't working for me. And I love that you brought up the 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 big name Stephen King, because I remember the first time you were on, I mentioned On Writing, and you just said horrible book. Let me tell you, horrible book. And I was like, no,
Did I
literally,
say that?
you did literally. Listen, you said that, and I was like, I love this guest because he has something unconventional to say. Let's dive into that. That was my exact response when he said that, and it's true. Sometimes you have these figures such as Stephen King who might be very helpful if you get into them, but for others, they might kind of feel pressured because they're just not the same kind of person, and the person is giving literally advice that just worked for them.
Yeah, and I feel like there's another aspect to that as well that I've been thinking about a lot lately, actually, because Stephen King, when he wrote On Writing, he didn't write it because he wanted to teach people how to write good books, right? That wasn't what his goal was with that. And I think a lot of writers will confuse what different books about writing are,
Mm-hmm.
because there's really two kinds of books. There's books about the craft of writing, which is typically the type of thing that I'm interested in studying. And then there's books on lifestyle. What kind of behaviors can you enact in your day-to-day life that will help you to be a better writer?
Mm-hmm.
And King is a lot bigger on lifestyle and on writing, and in a lot of the stuff that he talks about writing, it's more lifestyle decisions than, hey, how does the craft of it work? How do we build a plot that works? How do we build characters who work? How do we ramp up suspense in a novel? He's not very concerned about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking and I was like, a lot of people will look at King and On Writing and say, this is the one thing you have to read. Well, if but for what? What's your goal?
Right.
It
Right.
depends. Because if you do want to learn like craft things and like technical aspects of writing, I would never recommend King for that. Right?
Right.
There's a list of other books I would recommend if you want to learn craft, and a lot of books that are talking about specific elements of craft if that's what you're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are someone who is like a good writer and you know that you're a strong writer and you just don't have that I guess like that focus, or you need a schedule and you don't know how to do that, I would 100% recommend King.
Right.
And I would recommend, and again, there's like a slew of other people I would recommend to read if that's where you are struggling as a writer. I just feel like when a lot of people pick up a book like that,
Mm-hmm.
they're looking more for, how do I make my story better?
Yeah. Right.
Rather than when do I need to wake up to
Yeah.
write the best, And there is a difference, and both of them are necessary. I just don't think that the lifestyle aspect of it is typically what people are looking for. And I could be wrong. I could be 100% wrong. I just don't think that's what most people are looking for when they pick up a book like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, see, this is why I love when you come on the show, and I love when people are able to make it out to the show, because you really have such a remarkable, analytic perspective of things, and you're able to put a whole bunch of different textbooks together and say, this will help you with this. This will help you with another thing. And I feel like really you have a very important voice for that reason. And I love that you're so focused on craft. You know what I mean? Like, talking to you even helps me. It even helps me to kind of reframe what I'm looking for, even from moment to moment. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes you have to focus on lifestyle, like you just said. Sometimes you have to hone your craft more. Speaking of craft, I'm curious if you want to talk, if the work you have done so far has taught you anything new or unexpected about your own craft, and if you would like to share that with us.
Yes.
All right.
So I feel if I was gonna point out one thing that it's taught me about craft is that you really shouldn't tie yourself down to one set of rules, mm-hmm. like rules about craft, because it can vary, especially between genres. Things that craft, like ideas about craft that work in one genre won't work in others. If you're writing a murder mystery, it might not be a smart idea to have an omniscient narrator. Omniscient narrator in close first person who's jumping from character to character, because then we figure out who the killer is and why they did it too early, or we get too many ideas about that.
Right.
And the thing is, like, a lot of people will tell you that is a good, like, that's a good perspective to go into if you want to explore a lot of characters. But you always have to be careful about how those things play out. So I feel like the more that I read, the more that it's apparent to me that you can't take advice from one person,
right,
and let that be the thing that guides you. If you have an author who you idolize and you've gone to their TED Talk, or you've gone to their conference, or you've bought their master class, and they said all these great things, you wanted to model yourself after them, that's cool. And if that works for you, that's fine. But you have to understand that they're saying that from a very specific place where they're writing very specific novels, right? And they have a very specific lifestyle that can accommodate these things.
That's right.
So it's really important to seek out a lot of different opinions, which is, okay, all right, mini rant, which is why I think a lot of people don't like workshops. Because in a workshop, the person you defer to is whoever is in charge of the workshop, which usually whoever's leading the workshop tends to be a professor, or if you sign up for a workshop with someone who's prominent in the literary world, they're going to be who you defer to. If you don't agree with their opinion, then you're going to feel like you didn't get anything from the workshop. But it's not so much about that one person's opinion. It's about what can you take from their opinion, and what can you take from other people's opinions, and figure out how these things are working together, and how the different contexts that you receive these different pieces of advice about writing can help to inform and change the way that you write, produce.
That's right.
So
that is so.
It's weird. It's weird. It's super weird, because you also at the same time, it's like these are smart people, right? And they know what they're talking about, and it works.
That's
you
right.
have to understand when it's going to work, and in what circumstance you need to use it.
I tell you, you're very quotable. There's no status quo in writing. I love it. I absolutely love it. I want to address some comments real quick. Carrie says, kudos to you for your individualism. It's freeing for newer career writers like me to learn about your viewpoint. Yeah. And Christine says, as an author, we should be able to break the rules and write how we want to write. I like that. I can get behind that. And I guess those are the comments. Anybody? Carrie also said, always need space. Rest fuels creativity. Sure does. Ime, have you been able to rest?
No, I haven't. I actually don't sleep anymore. I don't do it. I don't. I am no. I actually no. I'm not. I wish I was looking at like it's that it was on writing and it was Anne Lamott's Bird on Bird that I read that make me want to do all this, and both of that I didn't like Bird on Bird and Bird on Bird and On Writing are the two most popular books on writing. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty like generally.
Sounds right.
I don't think anyone ever did like a study on it, but I'm pretty sure those are the two most popular ones that people read, and they're the two ones that feel the most stringent and restrictive, to the point where I wouldn't recommend it to someone who hasn't already done a lot of thinking themselves about what works for them and isn't already comfortable with what works for them. Then to go to those books and see, okay, what are other people comfortable with and how can I apply this to what I already have working for me? I think there's just like too many people who go to those books hoping that it's going to be a template for just automatic success, and they're not. All right. And that's the impression that people get from them, and they're just not going to be able to be that. So yeah,
Right.
I'm glad that other people like didn't resonate with On Writing, because it gets thrown around so much. I don't understand why, because it's
Right.
just not.
Well, I think it's possible that people look at what he puts out, and when they see his name and they see literally me about writing, like there's something about that combination that's like, ooh, this is it. This is the one. This is what I got to read, you know?
I think it's good if you want to be a prolific writer.
Yeah.
I'll say that. I think because that's what he does. He puts out 1-2 books a year.
Yeah.
And regardless of the quality, he's able to still produce those books, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's plenty of people who love love King, like legitimately don't think that anything he does is wrong. There's people who love to read King just like as like a pulpy read. They're like, I mean, his writing isn't that great, but I love reading it. There's people who just hate him. But at the end of the day, he's able to write a whole bunch.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be like King, that's the kind of book that might help you. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of indie authors do write quite a few books a year, or will try to write a few books a year. That's right. So for a lot of indie authors, I think that King would be a good place to go to for that advice. If you're more like a 1 book a year, 1 book every couple of years type of person, like I haven't written a book like start to finish. Yeah, that's how long it's been. I can't remember. So, but for people who don't want to do 1 book a year or multiple books a year, you might need to look somewhere else to figure out, hey, how can I focus on some things that are going to resonate with me or work with the way that I produce my own work.
Mm-hmm. That's right. One thing that I would really love to ask you. Well, first of all, one thing that I would really, really love to ask you is there anything you would like to touch upon tonight that we haven't touched upon yet? And it's okay if not. There you go.
I do want to talk. I do want to talk a little bit about designing characters at the end.
That was where I was headed next. So if you want to talk about it at the end, I can go someplace else for now. You tell me.
Or we could talk about it now.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was headed next, because you said that you're still working on your capstone and you're still doing all this great rigorous stuff that you've been doing, but you also have begun to do some character development. And I would really love to hear the Ime update.
Here's the update. This is it. Characters. Most important thing about character is point of view. That's what I found, is that a lot of, I don't know, like when you start coming up with a character, what are the first things that you start to work with?
Me?
Yeah.
First things that I start to work with. That's a good question. Well, point of view happens pretty early, because I've from the beginning I've been writing books with multiple points of view. I'm currently setting up a book now that has a narration style that is unique to the rest of the series that I put out. Carrie and I are putting something out that has a unique style to it, but it does also have an ensemble cast, a growing ensemble cast. So I would actually agree with you that point of view is something I work on very early.
Yeah, so that's God, see, you didn't give me a good answer. I don't like that.
Okay, all right,
Okay,
hold
yeah.
on.
Yeah, point of view and voice, I feel like get like really overlooked. So it's
Uh-huh.
like I know like a lot of people will do characters and they'll say, okay, well, this is who he is, this is his backstory, this is what he acts like, this is like all the attributes about him, his whole tragic backstory, whole 9 yards.
Mm-hmm.
But how much of that is the reader going to know if you're telling the story in third person?
Mm.
Right, because if you're doing it in third person, you don't have a lot of space to actually get into the character's thoughts and to learn a lot about that, except through external factors. And I think I mean I've read like some things where people do want to have really developed characters and do want to get that out,
Mm-hmm.
but they're telling it. They choose a point of view that doesn't allow them to get really intimate with their characters.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people who do come on to Drop a Line and who do listen to Drop a Line are people who are interested in creating characters who are relatable and who the audience is going to immediately cling to. And so a lot of times, a first person narrative does that well, or really close third person narrative. Omniscient narrative,
Yes.
typically not so much, right? You don't see that too much, but it's really important consideration to make when you are figuring out how close you want your reader to be to your characters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I would like to update my answer, if I may. So
Please.
one of the first things that I do when I create a character, and Carrie is saying in the comment section that I start inspired by real people. That's mostly true. Mostly true. But so I'm getting a little bit vulnerable here. One of the first things that I do is I focus on the character's backstory, motivation, um, height, weight, things like that. And in a lot of what I've done, what I was missing, and I do attempt to write in close third person. That's the style that I go for most often. But in a lot of what I do, I miss out on perspective, and I don't miss out on perspective. The biggest thing I miss out on is voice. And that's actually something that's been a real struggle as I edit my current work in progress. Now, Carrie, my wife to be, who is now my co-author, has been instrumental in helping me with that. And one of the first things that we do together is we sit down and we start thinking, who do the characters talk to? Who do they talk to? Who do they have relationships to? You know what I mean? What do they say in this situation? What do
Yeah.
they, what do they think about this? When they were 25, what experience did they have when they went such and such? And Carrie had a little journal. Carrie is an actress as well as a writer. So she put some of her acting flair into it. And I noticed that as we were talking back and forth as the characters and we were just having regular conversations about them, nothing to do with the plot, I started to realize that I was pretty much for the first time in my career beginning to develop a voice for each character. And it's so funny. It's like you said, that was something I overlooked for how long I've been doing this? 4 years. So yeah, I would say that I start with the basics, which is a mistake a lot of people make.
Yeah, I mean, voice is also super. See, and I feel like voice is really closely related to acting, because for, I mean, you're doing third person, but a lot of times if you're doing a first person story, then you need to come up with a voice that's going to be specific to that character.
Mm-hmm.
You can't write another story and use the exact same voice, because then, someone's going to read that and be like, this is a completely different character in a different world. Why do they have the same voice? They're going to immediately realize, okay, this is the author's voice. They don't actually have a character voice yet.
That's
And
right.
so it's so important to figure out some kind of way to inhabit that. And yeah, part of that is taking the time to figure out like you said, who does this person talk to? How do they behave around certain people? Where do they go in their free time? That stuff can all be really important to you understanding your character. Because as someone smarter than me once said, don't quote me on this because this is not my quote. I just remember this quote.
Got it.
Your character cannot exist in the book unless they exist before the book.
Ooh.
Right. If you don't know who the character is before you start writing, you're going to make all the wrong decisions about how they respond to things, about who they like, who they don't like. And the thing about writing characters is that you will also learn more about your characters as you write the story, as you develop with them, put them through whatever trials and tribulations they go through, to the point where you could get back to the beginning and just be like, you know what? This really isn't how this person would respond to this first third of the book. And if you pick up on that, that means, okay, you're going to have to rewrite all that. And if you don't pick up on it, it means that someone's going to be an asshole to you in the comment section or on a review and be like, the character is completely different in the last 2/3. It doesn't make any sense, right? And you don't want that to happen. So it's really hard to it's hard to do, but it's really easy to skip that part where you are really consciously considering who's this as a person. And like when you said basing it off of real people, that's like a really good step because you know how real people behave and respond to certain situations. And if you've written a good character, your audience should view that character as a person.
That's right.
Not a character. That's how I view all of my favorite fictional characters. They are people. I will live. Right. I will take a bullet for Jesse Pinkman, and he doesn't exist.
That's right.
I'll do it right now. I love the way
you said that. I love the way you said that. It's so true. That is so true. I do want to reply to that, but I also want to address the great comments we're getting. It's point of view for Carrie early on. Christine says it's all about relating to our characters. That is the only way to write so that readers can understand them. Carrie is loving unreliable narrators right now. That's what we're working with. On what I was talking about on us working on these characters, she says, honestly, it all started with, quote, Alec, what's Richard's favorite food? Yes, Carrie asked me a very simple question. She did not know that she had stoked a beast, but it was good because we identified a problem. And Christine says, yes, I agree. You should know your characters before you write them on paper. Carrie says, that's how I write and build characters when I'm acting. What has happened leading up to this moment? They walk on stage. Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
There's so much more than reciting lines. And we have just one more from Ray. He agrees. Personal experience in theater, acting can translate into writing. And you're still developing a character. And he also says, I have found I enjoy writing first-person narrative. As a former actor, I feel most responsible for one character's thoughts alone with less focus on others. No one knows exactly what another person is thinking. Woo! These are great comments, guys. Thank you all so much.
Yeah. I mean, I think the one hard thing with first person is that you have a lot of freedom and it feels really good to have that freedom to just be without one person and to be able to really explore them and get to know them more than anyone else. The hard part The Stars Within Us, I wrote that in first person. And like me personally, I don't think I will ever write first person again. Ever. Because you have to be with that person the entire time.
Yeah.
Everything that occurs in the plot has to make sense why you're moving from one point in the story to another. And you can never understand any of the other characters in the same way that you can understand the first person narrator. But it feels really great. It feels really great to just be with someone and get to know someone on that level. But I feel like sometimes when I'm working in first person, I feel like sometimes I feel like when I'm working in first person, literally all the time, that I just want to jump into these other people and figure out a little bit more about them and just know a little bit more explicitly what's happening in their psyches if I'm able to, in whatever perspective I choose to use for that story, which is not first person anymore. ever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if you write first person, like that's not like it's great. I love first person. I love reading first person. I'll say that. I love reading first person because I like having that connection with the character. I just find it like it's so hard for me to write it and commit to it because I just want to
Right.
I want to be in everyone's head.
Right.
And I want to feel a little bit more for everyone else and not just be restricted to that one person.
Well, I think that's so interesting because Christine also just said, I love writing multiple characters, not just focusing on one. I guess I feel like everyone deserves the spotlight. And conversely, Andrew just wrote, hey, Andrew just wrote, first person is a lot of fun, very liberating. Now, see, I know a little bit about Andrew behind the scenes, and I know that when he started, he was always doing third person. And now that he's breaking into first, he feels liberated. So I think that and you had said that you want to branch out into several different characters. So I really feel like earlier we were talking about point of view. Like I feel like our own point of view is like vital to what resonates the most with us, you know?
I know. I know the
I
tricky
should,
thing with
I
writing.
should say, sorry.
No, you finish first.
I shouldn't say point of view. That's a little bit vague. I think I wanted to say our experiences. Yeah.
I caught that.
Yeah.
Yeah. With writing multiple, like given the whole like Game of Thrones, I know he didn't invent it, but everyone knows it.
Mm-hmm.
But like having like multiple telling it from the perspectives of multiple people all in first person, I know like the thing that makes it really difficult is that it is, especially if you are telling it from the perspective of, I don't know, more than 3 people. I say that really arbitrarily. I don't know why 3 came into my head. There's like a specific number where you forget things about people. I don't remember what it is right now, but the more people you add who you're telling it from a first person perspective from, the harder it is to like remember that, hey, this specific person doesn't know this specific thing that this other first person narrator knows. And you really have to put a lot of effort into juggling what each character knows in their own perspective. And then on top of that, creating an individual voice for each character and making sure that when you switch into the mind of a different character and they're narrating, that their narration sounds different than the person before them, and that their narration is consistent every time you jump into their chapter or however the book or story is broken up. If anyone can do that and has fun doing it and enjoys doing it and is successful doing it, kudos to you, because I am not that dude. I can't do it. That's it's so much. It's so much. So if you can do it, whoever it was who said that they could do it or that they prefer doing it that way and like from those stories, I have all of the respect for you because it is a lot of energy to be able to balance all of those characters. So leave George R.R. Martin alone, everybody. Leave him alone. All right. He's doing his best. Let him work. He's tired.
He sure is. He sure is. I'm listening to Little Fires Everywhere. NG switches POV so seamlessly. It's gorgeous. Ooh, that sounds interesting.
Does she?
Yeah.
I read it and I don't remember. Maybe that's how seamless it was. I just don't remember it ever changing perspectives.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I like that.
That is a good book in general. So if you haven't read Little Fires Everywhere, don't watch it on Hulu. Just read the book instead, or at least read the book first.
Yeah. So Ime, tell us a little bit more about. We can go a little bit over tonight. Tell us a little bit more about your process of creating characters. Like, what are some things that really, grip you and that you enjoy, or are like vital to your process?
For me, I always start with an idea about the person. Like, what is the fundamental thing about, what do I want the reader to remember about this character at the end of everything? And I still hate Harry Potter, but Snape is like, he's kind of, he's Snape throughout the whole thing. But what does everyone remember about Snape and Harry Potter?
The ending, right?
Always.
Always, right? Nothing. Oh yeah, right. That, of course, yeah.
That's what everyone remembers Snape for. It's either
Right.
when he's being mean to kids in class, and if it's not that, it's always like
Hmm.
that's his character. Like,
Right.
despite everything else that he's done, that's his character. So I like to start with something like that. And
Hmm.
that's usually where a lot of my characters originate from. Is something that's I know that's going to be a really strong focal point to who they are,
Hmm.
and then I will build their complexities around that. So how, and I like to start with I guess contradictions because no one's
Ooh.
perfect. Real people are not perfect. If you have a perfect character, they're going to come across as flat or boring,
Mm.
and which is fine if they're supposed to be flat or boring. But
Hmm.
if you don't want your character to be flat or boring, they have to have, like, I don't know, insecurities, flaws, one or the other, all of the above. And so I like to say, okay, so this character is supposed to be, if his defining moment or her defining moment or their defining moment is that they're a noble person who made this huge sacrifice,
Hmm.
then am I going to make them come off as cold and detached for the majority of the story?
Hmm.
That would be the basic way to go, and I think that's fine. But
Hmm.
or would I, or what else might I do to their character to kind of make this moment, their defining moment, stand out? I
Hmm.
know a lot of times I'll come up with scenes like in the middle of a story or in the middle of a series before anything else. And so sometimes I'll just kind of build around that. But I always want to make sure that whatever build up to that is going to be rewarding and that it makes sense for the character.
Sure.
And so making sure that in retrospect that I am kind of planting these things and like showing this character is flawed, but also showing, even though they're flawed, this person who is supposed to be noble at the end, even though they are mean to everyone.
Hmm.
Sometimes they help old ladies cross the street,
Hmm.
right? And maybe the one time that their one noble moment, maybe that one noble moment is when they choose to protect the oldest thing that exists in the world, which is the world itself.
Hmm.
And then you're like, you know what? That's why this is stupid. But then you're like, that's why this guy was always helping old ladies because he respects people with like age and wisdom and like
Right.
history. Right. And
Right.
so it kind of starts to make sense to you. And so that's something I think is really important in characters is to try to create some sort of complexity.
Absolutely.
We shouldn't be able to read, you should be able to read them to some extent, but they shouldn't be so one note that you know everything that they're going to
Yeah.
do before they do it.
Right.
Because
Because
like, yeah,
yeah.
say it.
Well, then it's like, you're writing the story yourself, and you're like, okay, I'm kind of bored now. Like, I already
No,
know everything that's going to happen. I know everything that they're going to do. I disagree with all of it. Like,
and you probably even have like really good friends. You hang out with them and they do something that you didn't expect.
hmm.
You weren't like
Yes.
knew you were gonna do that.
Hmm. Exactly. Well,
Like,
I have a lot of thoughts about this as well, and it's like I sometimes feel like characters are built a little bit robotically. You know what I mean? Like they're built to be this idea of perfection, or even they're built in the sense of they have to have this one flaw, and the other thing that they do has to contradict their one key character flaw. And it's just like when you really learn about people. You know what I mean? You see how nuanced people are. You know what I mean? They act differently in different
mhm.
social situations. We're all the content of what's going on. We're all the result of what is going on beneath the skin. You know what I mean? And we're the sum of our experiences, I think, is the actual phrase. So um so yeah, like nobody's one note. Like when I was a personal aide to kids in school, you know what I mean? I would walk around the hallways with them, and they would react to this person one way and this person another way, and then yet this person another way, and I would just be like, I'm having a hard time figuring you out. Like like but that's
Yeah.
interesting, right?
And then sometimes people just do things that just don't make any sense
Hmm.
to anyone except for the person who did it.
Yeah.
Right. And you just have to trust that the reason that they did it made sense in their head. And I feel like as writers, sometimes we do get so caught up in it has to make sense, especially with character, that we forget that people don't always make sense to anyone else but themselves.
That's right.
And unless you are kind of in that first person or directly in that person's head, you have no way of knowing that. And sometimes that makes it better. If you have a character do something that doesn't make any sense, but you give a sense that they did it for a reason, even if you never let that reason be known. You know, as long as the reader knows that that is somehow in line with who they are, they might forgive you, right? So that's when you have to end up making judgment calls, because you can't please everyone. The same way people cannot be friends with everyone in the world, or people cannot please everyone. Your characters shouldn't please everyone.
That's right.
You shouldn't try to make a character who's perfect or make a character who is going to appeal to everyone. You should make a character who is, the way they behave should respect the kind of person you are molding them after.
That's right.
You know, whether that's a real person or an imagined person, there should be that sense of clarity and consistency there. And I feel like that's the most important thing. I will root for criminals. I don't care. I'll root for the axe murderer if he's interesting.
Right.
So,
well, and we often have too. I mean, you know, you brought up Breaking Bad earlier. It's like, you know, all of the criminal activity that took place on Breaking Bad, those are some of the most beloved characters on television. You know what I mean? Look at the whole organized crime film genre and a lot of the relatable characters that you find in there. You know what I mean? I mean, that's a real point.
What, Dexter had like 9 seasons?
8.
Okay, you've watched it a few too many times, huh?
No, I just remember season counts for whatever reason. I really wish I didn't remember season 8.
Is that your like superpower that you remember? Like, so that's your character right there, and that's something else. Is just interesting things. The guy who just knows how many seasons every TV show is. He hasn't even watched it. He knows exactly how many seasons there are. Like, that's interesting stuff like that. Instead of, he was 5'4" with dark brown hair and hazel eyes. He wore a leather vest every Wednesday above a plain white, dirty, off-color white t-shirt with leather trousers and black boots studded around the cuffs. The sharp kinds of studs that if he kicked you with them, it might draw blood. Like, cool, but okay, what's interesting? You know, like you can say that, but what does he do? How does he behave? Right. So, and like really like offbeat stuff like that. Like a character, maybe the narrator doesn't have to address it. No one has to address it. But there's just like a character who's always like, oh yeah, what was that? Season 3, episode 2. Just whenever somebody mentions anything, oh, that was off their sophomore album, right? Track 3, 3 minutes, 25 seconds long. You'll remember that character.
Right.
You don't have to know why in the hell they can remember all of these things, but you will remember the character. So that's also really important, is if you can imbue something that's like really interesting and, I hate to say it, but like quirky, unique. I'm going to say unique instead of quirky. Something really unique in this character. That's going to go a long way in helping people remember them.
Amen. That's great. That's brilliant. And I love how you have such an eye for these things that you can like pick it out in conversation. You know, that's your character. You know what I mean? You're just.
I wish I could have conversations. It's not my character. It's not me. I'm pretending right now. I'm in character. I'm in character, but it's not my character.
That's right. While we're on that subject, we've talked a great deal about our views on developing characters. Do you want to share anything specific about the characters you are developing, or is it a little too early for that?
It's not too early. This is super basic.
It's all right.
It's super basic where I'm at right now, but I'll say, okay, so the story that I'm doing right now is about a kid who is born in a village where everyone who's born in this village, because there's a holy mountain next to it, they're all born with some preternatural ability, some of which kind of border on magic. and he's the only person in the history of this maybe in the history of the place, maybe there's someone else before him who like was in the same situation. We don't know in the story. I don't know as the writer, so I can't speak about that. But he's actually ends up being born with a disability, and so everyone else has like a special thing for them, and he has a disability. So everyone gets named for their for whatever trait that they manifest.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the story of like a kid who is he just has really weak bones. That's his thing. He's really weak bones. He can't do things that other people do, but that's not where I envisioned him starting.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I first thought of the character, he was stopping he was dying to prevent the end of the world, or sacrificing himself to prevent the end of the world, and was essential. He was the leader of a group of individuals who all shared this ideal, this goal of saving the world. They all fail in the end. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, whatever that means for him.
Mm-hmm.
But then, so from there, I was like, okay, well, how did he get to the point where he wanted to do this, or he felt like he needed to do this so badly? And what I found out was that he was in a place where he felt ostracized. He felt like he needed to prove himself, and so he spent his entire life trying to prove that he was worth something, because he was born somewhere where you were only worth something if you received a blessing. And instead of receiving a blessing, he receives a curse, essentially. And so he spent his whole life trying to be this better person, trying to be someone who is whose life is worth something. And it's not quite that linear the way it goes. He ends up realizing at some point that, wow, this is stupid. Who cares what they think? But then he goes like on he goes it's a curvy road for him. He's back and forth between things, but he ends up having like this. I'm just gonna whatever. This is super vague, so it doesn't matter. He finds his inner strength at the end of the first book, and he realized that he does have more than what people thought he had,
Mm-hmm.
and this causes another character development in him to where he becomes a little bit arrogant, and
Mm-hmm.
he feels like he's on top of the world. He has to have a little bit of a reckoning and realize that there is stuff out there that is like way beyond what he is able to fix. And then I guess it's like his second character arc. So despite knowing that this is something that he can't fix, he still attempts to fix it. Because at this point in his life, he's reconciled with everyone who he grew up with. He's reconciled with the way that the world is, and he understands at that point that whatever we do, whatever happens, you have to take responsibility for the decisions that we make. So that's his main thing, is taking responsibility, which he learns through several different smaller arcs, which is why he ends up sacrificing himself at the end. But it just started from, I knew that I had this scene in my head where he makes this sacrifice to futile in the end, but he makes a sacrifice to save the world. And then I just kind of I hate to say I retrofit it, because that's not exactly that's not like precisely what I did, but I retrofit this entire like arc to lead him to this point that was that pivotal point for him as a character.
Right. Well, that resonates with me.
Yeah. And that point can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be like at the end of like the story. It can be that point where, if you do conceive characters that way, that point where you conceive a character can be, a third of the way, 3/4 of the way. It doesn't matter where it is, as long as you have like that strong idea of what that character is supposed to be, how you can get them there, and how they behave after they get to that point. So
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Ime. That was great wisdom, I have to tell you. And you really know how to go in deep and pick out the things that really matter. You've even got me thinking about some choices I'm going to make in my WIP. We are close to out of time for this evening. Is there any? Would you like to read anything live for us?
If I had something, I would. I don't have anything.
That's all right. That's all right. I should have asked you before. Do you have anything you would like to impart to the audience or to me before we go
But
out?
if I could though, I could I could send you an excerpt of the story that I'm talking about to post.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I could do that
Sure.
because I do have one. It's just the prologue, but I could send that because I like it and I just like finished editing it for the third time I got. Yeah, only the third time. But for the third time, and so it's kind of at a stable place. So like I would love to share that with anyone who would like to see what that looks like and see like kind of what
Sure.
uh the characters look like in there.
Uh-huh. Yeah. We could take a short break if you want to go off screen and grab it real quick and
Sure,
read it
yeah.
for live.
Yeah.
That'd be fine. We're going to show a little promo while Ime is getting his piece. This is Dropline. Do join us for writing sprints. Every now and then we have a writing sprint on Friday night. Let's play a quick promo for that. And we are back with Ime, and we are about to close the show with a little bit of prose. Fire away, Ime.
All right, so this is the prologue to my work in progress called the prologue is called the night the sky split open. And I'm just gonna read about the first page or a page and a half of it. On the night Twig was born, the sky split open. Of course, he hadn't been Twig then, only a boy born under the portent of a gash of white that throbbed overhead. Irrespective of that portent, to which the child's father gazed doe-eyed, Vizia the seer dedicated her attention solely to the task at hand. It was her duty to deliver the child, as she did all children in the nameless village. And she would swear on her life that in that moment, her blood-slicked hands guided the boy's skull from its mother's tender flesh, and she'd seen a hand reach down from the split sky, as if to steal the child away. And she would swear doubly so, that the flash of light that followed seared the truth of the boy's future into her head, the same flash that accompanied the cracks of bone as the remainder of Twig's body slid into the world. "My baby," Twig's mother called, each word punctuated by sharp breaths. She reached out for her son, but Vizia's head ran wild with images she could not understand, the portent of a prophecy born from that split sky. One look at the bloodied and broken newborn told her what needed to be done. Only seconds after the boy who would be Twig drew his first breath, Vizia the seer clutched the babe carefully against her breast and absconded. "Wait," the child's father called out to her. He would not pursue. She knew as much. In that moment, the health of his yelping spouse preceded the safety of his firstborn. That was the faultless error of his love, and Vizia capitalized on it. In the nameless village, she was responsible for the newborns, and he would not obstruct her. Beside the slab of stone upon which the child's mother bore him, her husband cradled and comforted her. Even then, he continued to beg for Vizia to return, but her progress was swift, and his pleas eventually faded out to nothing, even if the cries of the child against her breast did not. Regret boarded in the seer's heart. She could not relinquish the child to the care of its parents, while the prophetic images ran through her head, but she understood their pain. She could not relinquish him, knowing that the broken thing sat at the center of all the images she saw in her head. Vizia could not distinguish any one image from the other. Each faded sequence collated atop the last, with only brief flashes of clarity. A stream of lava burning its way across the trunks of impossibly tall trees. A dark-skinned man reaching into a pit of vipers. Prisoners slaving away in an open field. A chambered box from which pallid fumes seeped. A dark cloud throttling its way across the sky, casting all below it in darkness. And a young boy cradled in mist, beaten by a ring of soldiers. Vizia saw all these images but could not discern anyone. She was called the seer for good reason. She'd have been the only one to receive the message from above, and certainly would be the only capable of discerning its meaning. She'd felt a shift in the world's balance at the moment the child slid from its mother's womb. She pulled the child more securely against herself then. Another crack issued from the feeble thing. She barreled, fast as caution allowed, down the uneven path from the nameless village to her home at the base of the steps of Ascension. The great mountain that was supposed to pass upon the people of the village blessings, but had instead broken this very young child and left it trembling in her arms. And that's what I've got for the first page and a half.
Love it so far, my friend. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you very much for being here on the show and telling us about your process and even giving us a first look at it. Ime, it was a pleasure to have you here tonight. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. I would like to personally say that it was my honor.
Thank you. It's always good to be here. Glad I was able to make it tonight.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
You got it, my friend. So if you all want to support Ime, where can they find you, Ime?
You can find me on Instagram at I don't know what it is. IATTACK.
That's it. That's it. And if you want to learn more from Ime, you can follow him on Instagram. If you want to support his career, you can keep your eye on that. And I'm sure he will be joining us again on Drop a Line before long. And Ime, it was a pleasure. And I would like to wish you good luck with your character development and with your capstone. And just know that you have the whole community behind you here. You know, if you ever want to drop on by.
Thank you. I will. And good luck to you with your school as well, Alec.
Thank you so much, my friend. And that is our show for this evening, everybody. Ime, take care. Thank you all for joining us on Drop a Line, and we will see you next time.